doing the first half, which is really the sort of the trains, boats and planes bit, and then my brother's going to be doing the etc, which is quite a mixture of all sorts in the second half. So, as my brother said, it's transport in general. A couple of things we've never really sort of done very much about the railways, and it's not a train spotters type railway thing. It's more about the actual railway itself, the railway buildings on the railway station, and the way that the railway developed through Bedford, in the basically the Queen's Park area of it. So, the railway really developed in 3 stages through sort of on the north-south routes from the Midlands through to London. The first line was the Bedford to Bletchley line, 1846, and that basically was just a link line to join Bedford up with what eventually became the West Coast main line at Bletchley, so heading into London at Euston. Bedford eventually got its own line going north-south. It started building about 1855, and from Leicester it joined what is now the East Coast main line at Hitchin. There was always a few problems with that because the company, the Midland Railway, who owned the line that went through Bedford, didn't own the line beyond Hitchin. So they had to pay the other railway line a fee to use their bit of the line into King's Cross, and it wasn't really that satisfactory. When trains started becoming more frequent, the ones that came through Bedford, once they got to Hitchin, they got second choice of all the times. So they often had to wait at Hitchin because the other companies' trains got priority. As you see, the red line is the original line. When it opened, they hadn't even built the station where it is now. They had to use St John's Station, so they had to make a little bit of a detour into Bedford St John's Station and then back out again onto Hitchin. So it was all a little bit of palaver, really. They eventually built the station 2 years later, in 1859. Eventually, they got their own direct line into London, which is the one that goes into St Pancras, and that was another 9 years later, and that would follow the red line down as far as the station, and then deviate off onto the blue line over a new bridge further down, and that was the one that would end up, as it does now, in St Pancras. Although, at the time, St Pancras wasn't ready either, so it actually went into Moorgate instead. And then the only other major change that happened was because Bedford Station was in line with the original line, it meant that fast trains had to, even trains that weren't going to be stopping, had to slow right down because they had a bit of a curve. So 1891, the final main bit that they changed is this green line, and they built one that bypassed the station. Of course, now the railway station's a bit further up. They all go through the same bit, because obviously the station is now there where all the lines merge. Got a couple of pictures of the bridges. This is the original bridge, the 1857 bridge, which was the line that went to Hitchin. And this picture down here is actually the fast lane bridge. When they built this new curve that meant they could bypass the station, they built a new bridge for it. They then knocked down the old 1868 bridge and built another one next to it. So there's still 2 bridges there. That's where those 2 twin bridges are over the railway.
Over the river?
Over the river, yes. In those days, the railway companies didn't really care too much about who they went through. They just gave you a bit of compensation. And as you can see, this is the north part of Queen's Park. This is Brougham Road up here. And this used to be one whole nursery, but they just went straight through it. They would have given the nursery owners a bit of compensation, but unless you were someone who was, generally if you were a wealthy landowner, and kicked up a fuss. They often paid quite a lot of money to the company, the railway company, to go through their land. Otherwise, they had to make a big deviation. But they did tend to, in those days, ordinary farmers or people who owned just a plot of land, you got a bit of compensation, but other than that, straight through. This is the Bronham Road Bridge. That was the original one, the one on the right-hand side. The left-hand side was built when they changed the track to 4 lanes, when they 4 rails, when they did the bypass of the fast bypass last loop. The only other interesting thing about this is the nursery on this side. It was originally all owned by the same people, but they eventually sold off to 2 different people. And Horton and Smart. One thing, if you live around this part, you'll often hear at this time of year strange beeping sounds in your gardens, which is the midwife toad. And Bedford's one of the few places that has midwife toads, and they all originated from this nursery. They came over in, it's believed they came over in plants that were brought over from France around 1900-ish. And 2 schoolboys, who lived on Bronham Road, in fact they lived on one of the buildings, which is roughly where the unemployment place is at the moment.
Bishopstown,
Yes. They started a small colony in the pond in their back garden, and they've spread not that far, but certainly the northern sort of the Bronham Road end of Queen's Park. You quite often hear the strange electronic beeping sounds, and that often drives people mad because they can't work out what it is. They're tiny little toads, but they make an awful lot of noise. This at the bottom end, that Bronham Road warranted a bridge. Ford End Road, which wasn't called Ford End Road at the time, didn't. It was normally known as Cox's Pits Lane, or sometimes later than that, sometimes Gasworks Lane, and they just got a level crossing. So if you imagine this is sort of sideways. This is the original railway station, with a little mini turntable at the far end, and this is Cox's Pits Lane, which is now roughly where Ford End Road Bridge is. And this is a photograph taken round about 1860 of which would have been taken from the just there roughly of the original station. When the main line went through to St Pancras, the two lines which are on the original lines were blocked off in the middle to form a terminus. One line going to Hitchin and one going north, and 2 more sets of tracks went through. And this is one taken. This was around about 1870, shortly after the station was enlarged and the new set of tracks went through. By then, Ford End Road Bridge had been made as well. So this picture would have actually been taken from the top of Ford End Road Bridge. And here's a slightly later view. This is from 1914. There's not that much difference, but the bridge has been covered in. But the main parts of the station are exactly the same. With the arrival of the railways, the gasworks, which was originally much nearer to town, in roughly where the car park is at QD's. They moved further out of town. They used to get their coal by, which was transported down the river. But when the railways arrived, it was far easier to get the coal from the coal fields in the Midlands, from anywhere from Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Yorkshire. But the only thing was, when they built a bridge, the gasworks started kicking off because they had to cart the coal was originally unloaded on the town side and then just brought over the level crossing. It was more difficult carting over heavy loads of coal. So they eventually got their own siding a couple of years after the new track. So 1871, they got their own siding.
Would that have been by horse?
It would have been by horse, yes, yeah. Or manhandled. Almost certainly by horse. Horse and cart.
Was there tarmac on the roads?
Almost certainly not. No, tarmac really didn't come into about 1900-ish. It would have been what we call macadamed. It would be stone, different grades of stone, all compressed in. So it would be a reasonable surface, but it wasn't actually. They didn't put tar on the roads until quite a bit later. And when the fast line was built in 1891, the bridge had to be extended. This is Ford End Road Bridge, which accounts for that little kink in it. It's not directly straight. It goes up along a little bit, and then there's a slight bend before it goes back down again. So here's the front of Bedford Station, 1893, obviously a train expected. Some of these would be sort of hansom cab type things, some of them could be private carriages, someone to pick people up. A lot of the hotels had, places like the Swan Hotel, had their own carriages which would meet trains to take people to the hotel. So that's 1893. This one's 1953. And anyone who can remember the old station, I'm sure will remember this little bit with the ticket office and the entrance into the station. And this station shortly before demolition. It actually shut down by then. This is actually October 1978. The new station was starting to get in operation. This is this rough. You can see how close people parked to the entrance as well. So just a few odds and ends. This is quite an old poster advertising going to hunting with the Oakley Hunt, with the Oakley Hounds. They're almost certainly a bit optimistic, saying that they'll leave King's Cross at 9:10 and get to Bedford at 13 minutes past 10. It was probably possible, but with the lines and the engines, this dates from 1866. It's probably slightly unlikely that they would have kept quite as good time as that. This is a newly arrived engine. It's all gleaming outside the engine shed. The engine shed had a pitched roof when it was first built, and it kept a pitched roof until the 1940s, which I'll just show you fairly shortly. Postcards were very popular. There's a postcard of the railway station from 1906. And here's quite an interesting one. Wartime women workers cleaning one of the engines outside the engine shed from 1941.
Can I stop you there? You see the lady on there hanging on for dear life?
This one?
No, t'other end.
Oh yeah, yes.
My mum.
That's your mum.
You said you had the photo, yeah.
Well, they look like they're doing quite a good job. It's got a good shine on it. But it's nearly as shiny as the newly arrived one at the top. Allen's basically came to Bedford because of the railways. One of the things. There's various things.
He saw the land from.
He saw the land. No, there's about 4 or 5 different versions.
Sorry, there is a version, his own version.
Yes.
He'd been looking around for a long while
yes.
to find a suitable site.
Yes.
He did not spot the site because, come on, there are lots of empty fields between here and London.
Yes, yes.
He came to Bedford because there was already an engineering base.
Yeah. But
that is his account.
That's his account, yes, yes. There's quite a few other accounts which are very... there's talk that he found a boy or some kids playing football and things like that.
That's in it as well.
Yes, yes, yes. But he certainly came to Bedford, yes, and I suppose arriving at the station and seeing a large empty field the other side of the railway station.
But then he was looking for a workforce. So
he visited
Queen's Park.
He'd need a local population as well. Well, all in all, it certainly ended up WH Allen's building their works, or the Queen's Engineering works, by the side of the railway, on the Queen's Park side of the railway track. And right from the word go, they had their own sidings. Their sidings, their first sidings, were actually built in 1894, the year that the factory opened. These are a couple of pictures from the 1950s when they were actually expanding their sidings, which accounts for all the rubbish down the middle. But this is one of the several very large bits of machinery that are all, all on back of trailers to be dispatched by rail. And now we've got a picture from 1952, and you see the engine shed's now got its flat roof as it ended up with. You've got the sidings into the gasworks, the main lines going through, WH Allen's with the old office blocks there, and the railway station you can't quite see very clearly, but that's just behind the bridge there. Anyone who's been on the station wanting to get a newspaper or book to read or whatever will be familiar with these. This is one from round about 1910, the old bookstall and newspaper stand, and these are actually dated around about 1977. The place is deserted and actually started to demolish parts of it. There's a couple more photographs, again from the very last year or so of the old station. The entrance to it, the gates leading through once you've got your ticket. There's the gates from the opposite side, and then this rather, I can remember this rather cramped old steps and sort of bridge over the railway to the other platform. This photograph at the top was taken from the flats in Ashburnham Court, across the road from the new railway station. It's nearly complete. That's the covered walkway going into the station. That's the station building there, but you can see there's still building work going on. And this one is taken just slightly later. The new station is actually in place, and they're demolishing the old station. And this is where the original track went. You just see that sort of dirt track thing where the rails were. And to get right up to date, this is the Flying Scotsman coming through about 2 weeks ago. So I got up early to take a photograph of it as it came through. So this is the train, that's the end of the trains bit. Boats. This is an aerial view taken 1928 of the river. These are the twin bridges, twin railway bridges heading over the river. You can see a boat there, which would be one of the electric launches. They had their headquarters at the bottom of Whitbread Avenue, up the little sort of creek up the side there, it's up the top. And this bit here is the very end of the slide. This is obviously before any bridges across. The first bridge wasn't built until 1953. In those days there was no walkway along there. There was a walkway, but you had to go right inside and go up to where the walls of the gasworks was, and that joined up with the slide further up. So we go on to the pleasure cruise launches. This is the very first one, the Lodor. It arrived in Bedford just before 1900. It was originally a police launch on the River Thames, and it's believed that it was organised by a group of employees at WH Allen's, that it was purchased and arrived in Bedford on a trailer, and it started either 1898 or 1899. It was steam powered. They had problems with the chimney, with some of the bridges, particularly the first of the railway bridges, but the chimney was hinged, So if you needed to go under a low bridge, you could actually flick a nut and bolt, and it would, you could lower it. Apparently, it was a bit precarious, and also the people on the boat risked getting covered in certain smoke as it went under the bridges, because the smoke came straight out of the boiler. I'll say it's based at Whitbread Avenue. It ran services once it started getting reasonable weather, usually around the end of April, beginning of May, and till roughly the end of September, sometimes into October if the weather was okay. And this is an advert. The low door normally did the trip from the steps outside the Swan to Queen's Park, to Whitbread Avenue, and to the Slipe. And they also had a smaller boat, the Alma, that used to go up in the opposite direction up to Newnham Bridge. By the end of the First World War, in 1919, they bought 2 electric boats, and they also converted the low door to electric in 1920. So at that point, they were operating 3 electric powered ones. We've got a couple of adverts here. This one actually says electric launches, but you can see that it's actually still there must be an old photograph, because it's a steam powered one. And this is another advert for the electric launches. And another advert. These are the 3 that operated between the wars: the low door, the Lady Lena, and the Lorna Doone. They didn't renew their passenger licence after the 1938 season. So in 1939, that was the last year that they used them. Of course, war broke out as well, and they were actually left left in the water just off of Whitbread Avenue. Someone actually bought them, and they were sold as seen, and they were actually either very low in the water or underwater. In fact, when they tried to get one of them out, it fell apart. So they only ended up with one. It was the Lady Lena was the only one that was in any condition, and they basically rebuilt it and got a new passenger certificate in 1945, and they renamed it the Silver Stream. And from then onwards, all their boats were all called Silver something.
Something silver.
Yes, yeah.
He drives the current one. The John Bunyan.
Yeah. Well, the Silver Stream, Silver Foam and the Silver Spray were bought about the same time as the Silver Stream was back working again. I'm not sure which one they seems sure which exactly that one was, but this is from the 1950s, one of the electric launches. Obviously, a bit further up. The 2 smaller ones, the Silver Foam and Silver Spray, were replaced by the Silver Crest and Silver Dawn in sort of late 50s, early 60s. And Silver Stream was taken out of service in 1963, and that had been in bed for 43 years, but it had actually seen service on the River Thames for at least 20 years before that. So I think it was actually in service for about 70 years. Eventually, obviously, they packed in, and now there was supposed to be a photograph that my brother took this afternoon, in this point, of the John Bunyan boat. he actually went specially down the down the slide this afternoon to take it. And for some reason, it's not in. I put it in that. If it crops up later on, it may have got out of sequence.
It's got something to say.
Can I mention about the John Bunyan? I'm one of the volunteers for the John Bunyan.
You're one of the volunteers, okay. Yeah. Of course, it wasn't just pleasure cruisers that people could. You could hire your own boats. And in Queen's Park, the Foster's Boatyard by the seaside, the paddlers. You could hire boats or punts. You could also hire gramophones, wind-up gramophones. And of course they also had the tea room there where you can get refreshments as well. Of course, Mr. Foster had all sorts of things as well. He also had his garage. It was one of the few places, the mini zoo. Ice cream. Yeah. It's one of the few places where you could get petrol in Queen's Park. There and Odell's garages were the only petrol pumps in Queen's Park. So, and it also had, by the 1950s, it also had lock-up garages for hire as well. Of course, all that area is now actually, it's called the Paddlers, isn't it?
Yes, it was
Paddlers
called
Court.
Paddlers Court. There's now new houses built on the site. It's called Paddlers Court. And there's a postcard from sort of the early 1900s of Honey Hills. With should it be a hired boat or is someone actually a boat that they own themselves? Probably a hired one. And there's a few amateur pictures from the 1920s of boating in Queen's Park. A view of a cow from the river. This one down the bottom here, we've worked out, is almost certainly just where the bridge over the Slipe is about there now. We've got one of the electric cruisers at the in the background.
In the background.
This one we think is probably just up Honey Hills where it starts to get a bit where it starts rising up out from sort of past where the Paddlers is.
That's called the 10-foot.
Yeah, so, that sort of area. Yes,
You were only allowed to swim up there if you was a good swimmer.
These are all just amateur photographs from the 1920s. Oh, there it is.
Now he's happy now. You can go on now.
You're happy now. There's the John Bunyan boat. It was 2013, and it was yeah. I watched a YouTube video about a couple of hours ago, and actually saw David taking photographs of it being lowered into the water.
Can I mention?
Yes.
Can
I thought, well, I recognise that.
Can I mention about the boat?
About the boat.
Yeah, it's the boat is 72 feet long. Yeah, and as the first boat is 72 feet long and it's 10 feet wide. It just makes it in a lock. I'm the deck crew. I'm the one that stands in the front. I'm not on the picture though.
Okay. Of course, Queen's Engineering Works, W.H. Allen's, were famed for their machinery that are used in all sorts of boats and ships. They didn't normally make the main propulsion units, they were always made generally either in or close to the shipyards. But they made a lot of the auxiliary engines and things like generators and other electrical gear for the
Diesels, pumps.
diesels, pumps, yes, yeah. Famously, they made the set of 4 generators for the White Star liners, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. These are the picture of the 8, 4 for the Olympic and 4 for the Titanic. Obviously, the Titanic is the story of the Titanic is well known. The Olympic and the Britannic are not quite so well known. The Olympic was the only one that survived to reach the end of its normal life. The Britannic, which is the largest of the 3, was originally going to be called the Gigantic, but they said the name was too close to the Titanic, so they called it Britannic. That was converted. That was built as it never reached service before the beginning of the First World War, so it as a liner, so it was converted to a hospital ship, and it was sunk by a mine off the coast of Greece. Luckily, it was on its way to pick people up from Gallipoli and not on its way back. There were a few people unfortunately killed, but the thought if it had been full of injured people and bedridden people, it could have been an even bigger catastrophe than the Titanic.
What does it say just before it says yours sincerely?
Believe me. Believe me. In some ways it's quite cute that the Lord Pirrie, who's the chairman of Holland and Wolves, would handwrite a letter to W.H. Allen to confirm the order. You would have thought that someone would have, it would be typed out by a secretary and he'd just sign it, but he actually handwritten the whole letter to him as a confirmation. This is the Olympic. They actually carried as many as 6,000 troops at a time on the North Atlantic route as a troop carrier. After the Britannic had been sunk, it was the largest ship sailing at the time. And it went on the northern route, so although the problems with icebergs and stuff, it did a northern route mainly from Halifax in Nova Scotia, usually to Glasgow, so it went around the top end to avoid U-boats. And it's also quite well known for its dazzle colours, and which tried to fool U-boats which direction or the length, exactly where it was. It was the only U-boat believed to have sunk. It actually sank. Sorry, it's the only ship to sink a U-boat. It actually rammed a U-boat that was stalking it at one point. Caught it, and as far as I know, the U-boat sank with all loss of all lives, but it certainly was never found. And this is the Olympic and the Mauritania. W.H. Allen's also provided pumps, etc., for both the Mauritania and its sister ship, the Lusitania, which of course that was sunk, famously sank in the First World War. And this is at the very end of their lives. These are waiting in Southampton before heading off to Jarrow to be scrapped. They went to Jarrow because of Jarrow was given the job because of the unemployment in the area. They ripped it apart, and then what was left of it, the hull, they went out to Scotland to be completely scrapped. It was actually said that the houses in Jarrow, quite a number of humble abodes, had very posh carpets, which people had walked off with bits of carpet off of these what were relatively luxurious liners.
Some of the panelling from the Olympic is in a hotel.
Yes, in a hotel. Yeah, in Alec. Yes. I've seen the auction booklet for it. So there's quite a few W.H. Allen's things in, because the ships of this size had their own workshop that they could do minor repairs en route. So they had all sorts of machinery on board that they could actually do various sorts of metalwork things to make temporary repairs. And W.H. Allen's actually bought a pair of circulating pumps from the Mauritania in the 1930s. They had an exhibition hall for people visiting Allen, so they could actually show you their wares. And when the Mauritania was up for auction, the guts of the Mauritania was up for auction, W.H. Allen bought these fairly cheap, brought them back to Bedford, and then realised that they wouldn't fit through the doors, so they had to have it outside. You can just about see it says exhibition hall. It's just been cut off, but so this was actually outside the exhibition hall for a number of years. I don't know how long. And if anyone who worked at Allen's remember them being there, I should imagine it got scrapped during the Second World War, possibly.
But they were very proud of what they made.
Oh yes,
Everything up there would be labelled with a label made at W.H. Allen.
Yeah, yes. So we now we go on to planes. The first one isn't really a plane, but a balloon. One of the early balloon flights from in Bedford was in Queen's Park, just opposite the gasworks. Balloon flights tended to be near gasworks because they used the gas from the gasworks, which is the old coal gas was mainly hydrogen, and they used that for the balloon ascent. So most well-known balloon ascents will be somewhere close enough to a gasworks to have a pipe into a field nearby to inflate the balloon. And this one is from it's the Fire Brigade Grand Annual Fete from August 1879. All sorts of things going on. I'm sure they weren't all going on at the same time as it is in the thing, but there's sort of a drawing showing the types of things that happened. And the actual balloon itself is the same balloon that Fred Burnaby used to cross the English Channel 3 years later, the eclipse. WH Challenge during the First World War, they already had masses of contracts with the Royal Navy, but the Air Force also, they needed someone who was capable of making the engines for planes, and they got a deal to make aero engines in November 1915, and within 3 or 4 months they were starting to send out the engines. They were mainly one called Le Rhône. It's a French design. French fighters had, most of the French aircraft had these engines. British aircraft had these engines, and so did the Germans, because they actually had it was licensed to the Germans. So German planes also had the same engines in them. This gave a lot of work for women. Obviously there was plenty of work with so many men being serving in the armed forces. There was plenty of work for women anyway, but it was considered a particularly good job for women to do, because they were considered to have nimbler fingers, and they were used to doing intricate things like knitting and
Those women were
embroidery and stuff. Yes.
Those women were billeted in Queen's Park.
Well,
They come from the north, they were billeted.
yeah, I mean, obviously they used a lot of the local workforce, but the people were brought in. At the end of the war, when the contract finished, they closed down the aero engine business. J.P. White also were involved. They made wooden propellers during the First World War.
There's one of the rotary engines at Shuttleworth.
At Shuttleworth,
And
yes.
another one out of Duxford.
Oh right, yes. And there's one in Glasgow.
When King George visited the works of Queen Mary,
Yeah.
he inspected an engine which was being presented, but that's not the one at Shuttleworth.
That's not the one at
And I don't
Shuttleworth.
know what happened to it. I'd
Oh,
love to know what
right.
happened to it. It was supposedly on display in the Shire Hall or somewhere like that.
Yes. Yeah.
But where it went,
Where it
no
went.
one seems to know.
No. That one was a bit of a mystery. Yes. And when the First World War was over, there's an awful lot of people who got some flying experience, and there's an awful lot of planes going cheap. And quite a few people decided to set themselves up as a flying taxi service. And this particular person who flew this was intending to do a flying taxi service from London to Rugby. Quite why Rugby, I don't know. Maybe because that was about as far as the plane would take him. He did have a war record. He flew this particular plane during the war, but he had a very heavy landing in the fields near Honey Hill Farm, and had a bit of an argument with the farmer, because the farmer didn't want him to take off again and ruin his crop. So he had to wait a month, till later in the month, until the crop had been harvested. When he did take off, he didn't rise very far and plummeted. The pilot was killed and the engineer was seriously injured. They towed the plane to the Garden of the Three Tons in Biddenham and put it up for auction. This is the Peacock's auction thing. It wasn't actually sold at auction in Peacock's. It was eventually sold in Cambridge later on in the year, but only for £6, so it was obviously just for scrap and spares. And of course the other thing in Bedford was the R101 disaster, and Queen's Park had one person involved in it. This Christopher Ferguson, who lived in St Paul's Road, was one of the victims.
O'Neill Gardens. He was my neighbour.
Sorry?
O'Neill Gardens, Ferguson.
Yeah. Well, Christopher Ferguson in
Perhaps there was another
1930.
Ferguson.
Certainly, it was certainly St Paul's Road. And the very last thing before we break for a little while is a little bit about George Carter, or Wilfred George Carter. Locally born, educated locally, did an apprenticeship at W.H. Allen's from 1904 to 1909. Actually found his record in the archives yesterday. And because the source I had said he did an apprenticeship from 1906 to 1912, but it was actually
I beg your
from
pardon,
1904 to
my
1909.
Ferguson was the one from the airship.
Yes,
One.
yes, that was
They were
from
both Ferguson.
right.
So that's where the two Fergusons were.
As I say, the 1911 census has him living at 101 Tavistock Street and working as a draftsman at W.H. Allen's. He left Bedford around about 1914 or 1915, and he worked for most of the well-known airplane manufacturers. He started off with Sopwith, moved to Hawker, worked for Shorts Brothers, then de Havilland, and he was rising steadily up the ranks. By the time he got to Gloucester in 1931, he was their chief designer. He'd already been in touch with Frank Whittle, later to be Sir Frank Whittle, developing his own version of a turbojet engine. But there were various problems. He didn't have an aircraft body that would fit it because aircraft bodies were the wrong shape, and you didn't have the input of gases from the front through to the back, like propeller aircraft did. And he also had a few engineering problems with his early jet engines. And George Carter helped him out with a lot of the engineering bits to basically streamline his jet engine and get it working efficiently. The end result was the twin-engine Gloucester Meteor jet fighter, which is one of the first jet fighters to come into service. Came into service in 1944. He was well known enough to be given a stamp in his honour. There was a series of stamps, and if you actually look in the background, in the cloud, the cloud is actually made up of a photograph of him. You can just see his mouth, his nose, and his glasses in the cloud behind.
He also worked at Robertson's for a while.
Yes.
And he probably went to. He didn't go. He said he went to Bedford Modern School.
No, he didn't. No. He went to Clapham Road, and he went to Harper Boys Elementary. He left, and then went straight into a third-class apprenticeship. He didn't win any awards or anything. I did a couple of second-class courses, and he did it I've got some records of him doing some evening courses as well, outside of Allen's. But from what he did, he did enough to be awarded a CBE, and as I say, he also was basically one of the top aircraft designers of his time. Well, anyway, that's going to bring the first half to a close. We've actually overrun a little bit. We're going to have a quick break, do the raffle, and then my brother will take over with...
Right, the way to start, I'm sure most of you want to get home for extra time with penalties. So like Maurice said, the second half is very much a mishmash of all the other types of transport, including trams and hovercraft and all sorts. So what we're going to do first is go right back in time to when there weren't any cars. Where if you had a car, you could actually park it on the street instead of having to ride around for 20 minutes to find a space. So this is probably one of the earliest photos we've found that's got any sort of transport in. It's obviously one of the farms, one of the 3 or 4 farms at Queen Spark, and you've got the pony and trap, and obviously sort of various horse-drawn stuff. So that was quite a common sight Not the other photos of farms don't seem to have any sort of animals that would be capable of drawing any carts. So they actually shared it out because it was mainly the same family that owned a lot of the farms. So that's probably the earliest bit of transport in Queen's Park that we found. Right, that's the picture that's in the paper. It's Anthony Murray, who was one of the early vicars here. Apparently he had the vicarage where it still is, up Cutcliffe Road. And to keep the grass down, it's had a big patch of land between Cutcliffe Grove and Hurst Grove. He just bought a pet goat, called it Buttercup, and he used that basically as a lawnmower. So he sort of used to keep the grass down. Every so often he'd bring it down to the church and use it out the front, around the sides, and keep the grass down there. And that's why he's actually walking back up Marvel Road, having done his Buttercup's done his job for the day. And a few interesting local kids. I just love the fact that in those days you could take your pet goat for a walk around and without getting beat or
down the middle of the road.
Then the postcard at the bottom right hand corner is Ford End Road back in the 1920s. And again, there's some evidence of horse dung just down the bottom there, just above the writing. And there's only two little bits of transport, a bike that someone's leant up against the pavement. Nobody does that anymore, do they? Well, put it slowly. But you know, this technique of just putting your pedal down and it props it up perfectly. You know, people have to find something to tie it to, don't they?
No cars.
No, that's it. And all this is a little, looks like a trap that's lost its pony. Is the only other thing, which is miles up there in the distance as well. Yeah, and that's the only thing in the whole road going back to those days. Right, we'll go right there with this. Right, so a few other very early photos. Obviously Henders couldn't afford a pony, so they got the kid to do it. No, I just love that photo. I think it's actually over Cox's pits. They've probably been sort of like dumping some stuff, you know, and the kids sort of obviously thought, you know, I'll be the pony for the day and do the cart, but presumably they had some sort of horse or pony to actually cart the fruit and veg around the place. And then there's this other shop at the top. That's now the chicken and chip shop right at the bottom of Ford End Road Bridge, opposite Linley's. And again, there's a horse and cart, presumably to do with the bakers. There's a baker's next door, and that was probably the delivery method to get those around the streets. And it's gone a bit blurry, but I was trying to zoom in, because some of these photos we've shown before, but it's quite nice to sort of look a bit closer and try and spot the transport. Alright, delivering milk. Originally it's all done by hand, there weren't milk floats or anything, so it's like this sort of three-wheeler carts from Biddenham Dairies. I don't think Biddenham Dairies were actually ever based in Biddenham, it just sounded a bit posh. So it's actually originally Grafton Road, the depot. So these guys would go around, people either come out with a sort of a jug and they'd fill it up. We've got various methods, so you've got quite a sort of large urn type structure with the milk, and presumably they'd sort of go back and top it up with fresh milk and do the rest of the round. Yeah, so they'd be the ones that come over the bridge and into Queen's Park. A little bit later, the Biddenham Dairies was actually based on Bromham Road then. It's just where Age Concern is, sort of just by Union Street, that junction there. So where Age Concern was, that was actually Biddenham Dairies a bit later in life. And again, this is like a hand-drawn three-wheeler cart, and this time they've gone all high-tech, they've actually got milk bottles now.
Old Joe Barker that used to have the ironmonger shop in Innisea Road, he used to work there, Biddenham Dairies, and I remember one day, icy in the winter, they come over Bromham Road Bridge, and the barrow got away from him, and he got umpteen broken milk bottles and the churn all over the place.
Did he cry over it though? Did he cry over it?
No, he had to go and borrow a sweeping brush and a dumpster.
Yeah, of course, yeah, that's it, yeah. He lost quite a few pounds worth of milk there as well. Yeah, so that was the original way of delivering milk, was basically by hand. And sort of going down with the cart, presumably shouting out, you know, what's the milk? There wouldn't be sort of leaving your milk bottles out maybe later. Right, this is one where we're hoping Jim Hull was going to be, because he was going to do like a little section on Hull's haulage. But if anyone is interested in the history of Hull's haulage, there is a DVD somewhere of a talk that we did years and years ago. But these are just three photos to sort of show the way their firm developed. So it started off just a horse and cart, a It's just literally at the bottom of this road outside the Old Bell public house. And then obviously they moved on, did a lot of work for Allen's, and these sort of massive lorries, all converted especially sort of for the heavy machinery that Maurice was talking about earlier. Yeah, so to say, if anyone's interested in the whole history of hulls, there is a DVD available of that talk.
And the Hull, of course, as well.
Oh, certainly David here is a member of the family as well, yeah, so if you've got any questions, ask him. Yeah.
Jim is the one that knows all the history now.
Oh, that's it, sure,
He
yeah.
just wants to get away from it.
I mean, to be honest, that's one of the reasons we had transport as a talk. We thought, well, Jim will do a section as well, and then we realised he was off sunning himself somewhere exotic, we showed this one last time. This is WH Allen just leaving his house at Maurice and Paul, which eventually became Maurice Hospital. But what we thought we'd do is have just a little closer look at the car. So, oh, it's not. It doesn't seem to have a steering wheel. If you look closely, they've actually got sort of two little levers to steer it. There also doesn't seem to be anywhere to store any petrol, so you realise this was a really, really early electric car. We've tried to find sort of roughly what model it is, but everyone's talking about going to the modern age and having electric cars, so there's less pollution. I'm pretty certain that is one of the very sort of early electric-driven cars. The thing about him, Maurice mentioned Mr. Odell earlier, who had the garage on Preston Road. At one point, Mr. Odell was his chauffeur, and apparently they had problems when he got to sort of the bottom of his drive. There was a bit of a steep climb, and the car didn't have enough power to get up there, so Mr. Allen used to have to get out and walk the last little bit while he drove up, so it wouldn't sort of take the extra weight. He wasn't that fat, was he? But it was just like, didn't have the power to get up the hill to the entrance, because it's quite a long driveway up to Bonham Hall, which is where he lived with his family. Right, this is a really early photo from 1908 outside the Swan Hotel. Somewhere in there is Mr. Allen and his wife. This is like the Bedfordshire Automobile Club on a day out, so they all sort of paraded their cars before they set off. I did notice that a lot of the ladies have got their fancy hats and they're all tied down with ribbons, because obviously when it's whizzing along without any sort of roof on, the hats are going to go flying off and someone's going to get an expensive hat for free. Yeah. Probably is actually, yeah. Yeah, it did tend to be the sort of the wealthier people, the landowners, the big businessmen, and obviously some of the smaller businessmen needed some sort of transport as well. So there weren't that many people that actually owned cars. So you're right, it probably is everyone that had a car turned up for that, Right, this is evidence of the first, what we reckon is the first car accident involving someone in Queen's Park. And this is Dr. Fasnacht, who had the surgery, which is on the corner of Preston Road and Hurst Road. Didn't actually bash into another car, because I was thinking, how can you have a car accident with so few cars on the road? He actually sort of swerved to avoid a flock of sheep and ended up skidding around on the tarmac, it says, and the car tumbled over a couple of times, and he ended up with a broken wrist and 2 broken ribs. His wife's back was seriously hurt, and there's 3 other ladies in the car as well, but they still had bruises and scratches. Yeah, so that was out on the Marston Road, it says.
Was it Marsh Lees?
Yeah. Yeah, and the picture there is actually, there's a stained glass window to Dr. Fasnacht in the church, and it's sort of opposite this one on the other side of the church. We thought that was because he died, but it's actually all the work he did for the church. He's the first church ward, and he donated lots of stuff to the church. So they did a window in his honour when he actually left the parish. Right, and I was saying, it's only tend to be the sort of wealthier people. This is one of the sons of W.H. Allen, Harold Gwyn Allen, and this is his car, which they reckon the body of this was built by Nichols Garage, sort of down by where the college is now. And they reckon that originally it was an open top one, but it's obviously been converted sort of to cover it in. Maybe realised the British weather never gets that warm. Looks like a pair of handcuffs on the side, and that's all right. Right, and then again, the Allen family, there's quite a lot of sons there. I'm not sure how many of them had cars, but they all seem to have sort of fairly decent motors.
That's a big car.
That's it, yeah. And again, this is outside the offices that would have been at the bottom of the bridge, and presumably that's all the directors and staff, the office staff and Allen's obviously family and staff. I think that's Mr. Richard Allen actually in the car doing a little selfie there. Right, so not many people had seen cars, but obviously when King George V and Queen Mary turned up to visit Allen's at the end of the war, they came in this car. We always reckon this is one of the worst royal paparazzi photos ever, because there's obviously timed it. It'd be one of those days when you can only get one shot, and you'd have to change the plate, you know. So someone obviously got in the way, and they've mistimed it, and I think you can just about see the back of the Queen's head disappearing through there.
A bit of an elbow on the side.
Oh, that's it, yeah. But he did get his, I thought he did get his act together eventually. So this is the car driving down one of the works roads, so you get a much better view of quite a cavalcade of cars as they do for the royal family. Right, so not quite so exotic methods of transport, again the mid-1920s in Allen's. So the basic design was just this. It didn't have a front to it or any sort of safety gear. You know, you just seem to sit on a little seat at the front, and then there's sort of pile various bits of machinery on it, just to sort of make the cart things around the works. It wouldn't be one that you'd actually have out on the road.
They used to run up and down between the big works where they tested the motors to the works gates.
Yeah.
That's what they call
They would
it.
actually, yeah, they would actually go out on the road then, yeah.
One of them floated up and
Oh
forward.
my God, no, actually it doesn't look safe enough really, does it? There's obviously no seat belts, you just see like an open little cabin at the front.
Yeah,
That's
carry
it.
heavy weights.
Right, sure, yeah, that's it, yeah. Oh right, so it did, I was lying there, and it did actually transport it between the two works, one on this end and one down by the bridge. Right, and then there's someone called George Langley, who's obviously again very proud of his car. I think a lot of people when they first got their first car, they'd always sort of get a photographer in to do this pose shot outside their house, and this is in Beverley Crescent, again in the 1920s. Right, this is a slightly different sort of car. This is one we found, someone lent us this when we were doing one of the first magazines, and the original one, it was all scratched and sort of torn, so we did a little bit of repair on it. It was also, we realised it was back to front, because this is in Marlborough Road, and that's the back end of the St All Saints Church, right in the distance on the right. And the picture that he had was actually round the wrong way, so obviously with the magic of computers, you can tidy up pictures, you can fix all the cracks down this side, and actually get it round the right. And the bloke himself was delighted to actually see, you know, that's the proper picture. So it's him in a handmade car, and apparently the car was actually made by one of the local shoemakers, and it's all made of leather. Obviously all the bodywork is all made of leather, and then obviously they've got the sort of usual go-kart sort of contraption, probably an old tram or something for the base
What
of it.
road did you think that was?
It's in Marlborough Road, just the top end of Marlborough Road.
You
That's
can
the
see
back end
up
of
the
All
top.
Saints.
They were collared for the war effort.
Oh yes, yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah, that's it, yeah. So it's sort of
You
made
want
to it. It's got to be
dimensions.
before, yeah, it's got to be before the
They're not there.
Second World War, isn't it? Definitely, yeah. Yeah, so I've just put that into this nice shot that sort of this kid's got this really fancy car handmade for him.
Transport.
Right, obviously other royal visits. This is Princess Elizabeth when she visited Bedford in 1946, so she'd have been, what, 20 then, she's turned 90. So she came to actually sort of do various things in the town centre, mainly sort of around the Corn Exchange, the town hall, and then when she was finished with the town hall, she was supposed to sort of go to the Swan Hotel for lunch, but she insisted that she wanted as many school children to see her as possible. I know we've said this before, but one of the first stops was over the bridge around Queen's Park School, and apparently they were the loudest kids in the whole area, so something's that changed. And she did a huge tour of Bedford, so we were thinking, you know, from Town Hall to Swan Hotel, you can't possibly do it in over 5 minutes, no matter how slow you walk, but she insisted she did this whole lap of the town, past as many schools as possible, so as many people as possible can actually see her in the cavalcade. So again, that would be quite a novelty in the 1946, seeing so many cars in a row. Right, this is not quite so exotic piece of transport for her husband. This is 1959 when he came to open the new office block at Allen's. And this is like an early version of the Pope-mobile, we reckon. Just again, it's one of the local firms. methods of carrying presumably equipment around most of the time. They wouldn't normally have people hanging off the back of it. But there's Philip in the corner of it. Seems to be quite happy with this method of transport. Right, and like I said, there's various local shopkeepers would have sort of their own method of transport. So this is a very early photo of Mr. Moss's baker's van. The only one was obviously this. I'm not sure he always took the baby round in the basket. If you look close, there's actually a baby in there. Sitting out. It's part of the delivery service. And then over the years, he got through quite a few different vans as well, you know, again to do his deliveries. It always sort of says that he'd deliver to any part of Queen's Park, but I don't recognise any that being Queen's Park, to be honest. I think he probably went out a bit further as well. If people can buy his bread and butter, etc., then obviously he'd deliver to them. So that's an important part of the local businessman, you know, just having your own van. It was quite a big thing in those days, in the 50s. Right, looking at a few other photos, ones we've shown before. The one on the right is Jimmy Mole's car, and again, no problem parking in those days. It just looks like it's parked in the middle of the road there. So again, had your car on the road. And the one at the top is the VE Day celebrations up Honeyhill Road, which is shown loads of times. And again, if you look closely in the polo mint at the top, there's the one car on the road. It's up there. I know my brother and I have sort of organised a few street parties in Dunville Road, and the amount of hassle it is to get rid of all the cars in the road now, we've given up now. It's just impossible to actually get, because there's nowhere for those cars to go. You chuck them out of our road, all the other roads get clogged up. Yeah, so there is just one other car in that shop as well. And the Moss's place is just start the picture out. Right, again, another VE Day celebration, this time up Hurst Grove. I'm not sure that's Jimmy Mole's car actually, but yeah, it's just the one car in the street again, and a really unfair three-legged race, so they're definitely opposite cheat on that. Alright, there's a few other car accidents. These again from the early 1950s. The top one doesn't look that sort of nasty an accident. It was a collision between a gas van, dairy van or milk float and a bus, and it looks like the milk float's got squashed in between them. And then there's another one, top right corner, there's a car that smashed into a back of a lorry. And then there's this sort of tragic event where there's a rugby team coming back from playing, and one of the players got killed and four was injured, and that was just at Gallows Corner up the end of Road, on that turn. Right, this is a photo, aerial view of Queen's Park from 1955, and what I've tried to do, it's quite hard with some of the shadows, but I've tried to pinpoint where the cars are, and you see most, yeah, it's really hard to sort of spot any other cars apart from those ones because of some of the shadows. There are probably one or two in each road. But certainly the ones up close you can see clearly it's just the one car which are hidden under the red stars. So nowadays if you found that many parking spaces for the night, it's the sort of things have slightly changed, haven't they? Right, this is, these are not actually workers leaving Allen's. You can see Allen's is still just being built, it's still building the gatehouse in the background. But this is Allen's Cycling Club, so they were out on an outing, probably a weekend trip somewhere. But I think, you know, when the workforce all got bikes, it probably was a bit like that, you know, since the bell went for the end of the shift. They're all lined up, sort of a bit like Tour de France, they know, all going over the bridge. Yeah, but I love that photo, you know, it's probably one of the earliest photos of Allen's workers.
No women.
Sorry?
No women.
Oh, definitely not. No, that's it. No, they're inside doing all the work. Right, and these are a few classic shots of how it was about 4 times a day. You know, workers turning up, workers going home for lunch, workers coming back from lunch. The bridge was definitely a no-go zone when they all started pouring out. And most of them would actually be going over the bridge.
Sorry, that bottom one, let's go back one. The bottom one, they always look so miserable. They're going home for lunch, they're not
They finished the shift, haven't they?
They look really pissed off.
Right, and the lady at the top there that seems to be leading the race is our mum, one of Maurice's mum on that top. Yeah, there she is. Definitely the lead. She probably did that most times, getting back to Home Street. for a lunch. Right, and it's a nice old postcard, and that's the Globe type sign there. I don't think that all the workers are actually going to the Globe, they're sort of heading home, but again, in those days you could just walk down the street, but the close up there shows that everyone going over the bridge, almost all of them were on bikes, and again, no rules at all, you didn't have to stand on the left.
Is that the old gas showroom, that building?
It is on the right there, yeah. So it's a lovely postcard, you know, I'm not quite sure why they took it, but there's so many things going on in it. I just love the fact it's just a big massive cycling going over the bridge into the distance. And again, that's almost certainly sort of, yeah, it says dinner time, it's like lunchtime. I wonder, one or two of those I'll probably head into the pub. Right, next to that pub, obviously, this is where most people would have either got their bikes in the first place, or certainly got their bikes fixed in Nile Lights. Somehow the Nile Light has been chopped off, and probably people recognise him. And it always used to fascinate us as children, because that was where the bus stop was outside, the bus into town. And there was also a milk machine just in the corner there. But all the buses...
I used to have to take the accumulator there to be recharged.
That's right.
For the radio.
That's it. Oh, right.
It's where you got your powered electric to power your radio and so on.
Was it?
He
Oh,
would
right.
charge it for you. That's what that lady did.
Oh, excellent, yeah. Oh, but always assumed that you just did bikes and that was it, you know.
An accumulator,
Yeah.
which used to store your electric in and put it in it for you to use to get your radio.
Excellent, right. Oh, that's a different one, yeah, that's good. That's why we like people chipping in, because you find all these new things out. But yeah, it was fascinating that every single bike that he sold was always the same colour. We used to call it Nile Light blue. There's a certain shade of bright blue, a little bit similar to the chairs, a little bit lighter. But every single bike that he did, it was always the same shade of blue, wasn't it? You could always tell where people had bought the bikes.
He was a very popular guy because he provided a lot of services to the poor.
Well, that's it, yeah. And then obviously you had things like Michael's Cycles up Midland Road, you know, and other ones like Halfords later on. But certainly for the Queen's Park, he was the main man to go to, wasn't he? To get your bike, to buy your bike, get it fixed, get you any bits you needed for it. Right, this is the proposed tram system for Bedford. So the one on the left with the orange lines, that was in 1878, and I've just gone over the lines in orange today to sort of highlight them a bit better because the map's not all that clear. So there was a proposal to have trams. It would have been horse-drawn trams in those days, and it links up to. Have you got the pointy thing? Yes.
Just press the little button there on the side.
So obviously you've got St John's Station just down here. So obviously one of the lines stops in the car park with that. Obviously this line's going out towards Kempston. I'm not sure why it stops in the middle of nowhere. I think it's because in the end none of it got built anyway. Then obviously this one going down Actual Road. And then you've got this other route that goes from St John's Station right up the High Street, up Bromham Road, up to Ashburnham Road, down to the main station. So that would be quite a popular route. Then up Midland Road, down Harbour Street, around St Paul's Church, and then link up to the High Street again. So that's the proposal. None of it ever got built. It didn't get off the ground at all. So then in 1899, Maurice only found this a little while ago, there was a really elaborate tramway system that they came up with, and this was just going to be the Queen's Park bit, and basically went from the Bell to the top of Rutland Road, or bottom of Rutland Road, and that was going to be the Queen's Park section, tramway number 20. So obviously there's another 19 tramways that link all the town up. It looked really complicated, the whole sort of setup, you know, all the measurements were in chains, which sort of completely confused us. But that was going to be the Queen's Park section. Obviously they didn't have the money to actually build all the lines for the trams anyway, and there would have been problems because trams aren't very good at going up any sort of incline. So obviously going over the railway bridge, backwards and forwards would have been a bit of a problem as well. So in the end none of that happened as well, but that was the proposal, that there'd be a tram line to get you from the Bell to the Grafton, basically. Right, and going to sort of coach travel. These are sort of very early like shower bank trips, again from the Bell down the bottom of the road. Don't seem to be a lot of women on that trip either. I'm not sure that maybe some ladies in the one in the background, but whether that's a pub trip or a works trip, and obviously going out for the day, it's horse-drawn shower bangs, and it's like a pony and track, pony and cart at the back. Right, the shower bank's got a little bit more flashy after that. I think the top's been cut off, but there was a garage down Marble Road, just where that little cut through between Coventry Road and Marble Road is. The garage for trips to London Zoo, the Showdown trips, is just by the side there where they've just put new houses. And this is possibly not a group from Queen's Park, but that would be the type of shower bangs that were available. And then there's various other companies sprung up, all of these in Queen's Park. So Henman's is the one that's up Marble Road, near that little passageway. You've got this one in Honeyhill Road. We seem to have two properties, I assume they're opposite each other roughly, 44 and 53. And then Dreadnought Saloons up Cutcliffe Grove. All sorts of seaside runs. So obviously in those days, these were like 1920s, early 20s. You know, trips out was sort of becoming quite popular, so people could actually hire one for the day, or you'd have a works trip and then all.
You notice it's a luxurious all-weather coach, so it's got a thing that you pull on.
Yeah, it's a big leather canopy. Apparently it was ridiculously heavy, the canopy, so it took all the people would have to get off and actually help sort of haul the canopy over, because it was like solid metal and it was really thick, heavy leather, and then there was some sort of plexiglass type stuff that you had to fit in as well. Well, definitely that'd be easier, wouldn't it? Right, and then a little bit later, you'd have sort of, obviously the shower bangs went out of fashion when this type of coach came in, became popular. Kempstonian, obviously based in Kempston, but this was the one that was, we haven't mentioned the football club yet, I think, today. But this is the one that the Eagles used to use for the players and also for many years for the fans. So this was actually taken from one of the early football programme from about early 1950s, Kempstonian coaches. And this is one actually parked in the car park at the football ground. And it's just about to take the 1956 team on their trip to Ireland as reward for doing so well in the FA Cup that year. Yeah, so that is almost the same coach that is in the advert. Right, so as well as the team, you'd also get the supporters using a similar sort of coach. I don't think that's Kempstonian, I'm not used by Barfordian, I looks at the letters, a few better you can see. They'd sometimes leave from down this way, but obviously in later years when it's popular matches, they used to leave from Cooper's Corner. If it's a big match, they might have 10 or 12 coaches, and there's no way they'd all get over the bridge and park up. So they tend to leave from Cooper's Corner, but quite often it would be just down the end of the football ground if it's one coach load of fans. And again, quite a lot of women amongst them. So that's what the early football hooligans used to look like, quite well dressed. A couple of skinheads in there. Right, we've shown these a couple of times before, but these are sort of history of the buses that served Queen's Park. The very early one that we talked about in the last talk, in the first bus we reckon that served Queen's Park. And that's actually just coming out of Mill Street, about to go up Silver Street and bash into those two big silver faces actually going further. Right, the double decker obviously it's on its way to Kempston, but that would have been one that served Queen's Park at certain times. You've got a suicide corner at the top, which is called Suicide Corner. That's actually from Allen's magazine, so it's their nickname for the corner where all the bikes are coming out at certain times of day. Suicide Corner is by the chicken and chip shop, and that sort of corner there. So if you try and cross the road when all the bikes are coming out from work, that's suicide.
That would be Cooper's Corner, Cooper's seats.
That's it, yeah, sure, yeah. It's just
behind the
it's
bus.
just that guy Cleveland Street, yeah. The other one's the other side of town, but it's definitely a Queen's Park bus. And then we also had double deckers. I still can't believe double deckers used to come over Queen's Park and manage to get through. This is struggling enough at the moment.
They
just the little buses, you know.
Platform back, so they. Like
Oh, that's it, yeah, certainly.
They had the white pole.
The old
there,
Route Master
where you
one,
got
yeah.
on. There were no doors.
Yeah, so you can nip off without paying as well. Allegedly. Right, then Franco's Ice Cream. So I was very hopeful this time of getting a few more photos of Franco's Ice Cream vans. I actually contacted them, they got back to me this time, but they still didn't send me the couple of photos they promised. So this is a view of the yard. Again, it's just sort of at the back of the gasworks up Lawrence Street.
Yeah.
Sort of shortly before they moved out of Queen's Park, in fact. Right, and then there's a couple of other pictures of ice cream vans. Again, this one's at the football ground, hoping to sort of catch people as they come out. He actually went up to Crewe to buy the van, and he was hoping it was going to be a family business, but his sons and daughters didn't want to take it on, so he ended up having to sell it. that you know, a lot of the Italian community decided that's a good way of making money. Certainly in the 50s and 60s, ice cream became popular. So there's sort of, Franco's is still a really popular make. Yeah.
Franco's is a big firm.
Yeah, and obviously Franco's at the top. You can tell that's the 60s.
That must be somewhere near the football ground because you could
Yeah, it's at the back
tell
Tellarite. Yeah, I remember that when he was coming out of the...
That would be Valley Street.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. So at the back, you know.
Right, and the final little bit, something that we mentioned years and years ago, one of our very first talks, and we were doing about famous people with a connection to Queen's Park. And this is Christopher Cockerell, who went on to be a really famous inventor of the hovercraft. He actually invented quite a lot of other things as well. His father was quite well off. He was actually director of the Fitzwilliam Museums, the main museum and art gallery in Cambridge. And I think his father was a bit disappointed that he wanted to go into engineering rather than sort of arty things. And apparently he used to have lots of big literary figures used to come and visit, sort of people like Hardy and Lawrence of Arabia, people like that would come. And apparently he was more interested in T.A. Lawrence's motorbike than he was in listening to them doing all their literary talk. So he ended up actually becoming an apprentice at Allen's. The thing on the right was actually his first prototype for the hovercraft. And basically what it was a kitty cat food tin inside a coffee tin. And then it's an industrial air blower. And he worked out this way, and used the weighing scales to sort of test how much suction it had. And it was a very early hovercraft design, because he realised that boats couldn't go as fast as he wanted them to because of the friction between the boat and the water. So if you had a way of actually floating on a cushion of air above it, you could do that. So before, all we had was just a few lines in the book about Allen's that Christopher Cockerell. Yes,
my mother always said she went out a couple of times with him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
that was it a couple of times.
Was it?
Otherwise I might not be here.
Yeah, he's just hobbling around, isn't he?
Yeah.
Right, so obviously he became really famous, he got knighted, he got CBE as well, and they actually named one of the hovercrafts after him, Sir Christopher, and that's that's not the Ouse, by the way, it's not up Queen's Park, that's hovercraft going up the Thames actually, a big demonstration. But then, only a few days ago, we actually sort of went to the archives and found his records from Allen's, two really beautifully written, handwritten pages, all about Christopher Sidney Cockerell. And it's amazing how many different sort of shops that he worked in, the foundry, the Smiths, the pattern shop, the glass foundry. This is after he'd done a degree at Cambridge. This was his first sort of work experience, if you like. He was there for about 2 years and 2 months.
Very talented guy for his...
Yeah, I think the thing is he was really ambitious as well, you see, because this wasn't good enough for him. He had his own ideas. And after this, he actually left early. He was supposed to be doing 2 years at Allen's, but he left after 2 years. He was supposed to do 3 years, yeah. He left after 2 years and a bit. And he just went back to university and did another course, and then ended up working for Marconi. And apparently his dad, as an incentive, said, I'll give you £10 for every invention, every patent that you come up with. And apparently in a couple of weeks, he was already £100 down, because he was coming up with all these ideas, like you say, really creative, lots of really sort of forward-thinking ideas. So as well, he's obviously famous for the hovercraft, but there's lots of other things. There was a method of actually guiding airmen back to the country. He came up with some sort of system, like a radar system that he invented, and apparently that saved loads and loads of lives during the Second World War. And again, working at Marconi, he was the big ideas man.
Well, it says there he brought some very good ideas to the testing.
That's it, yeah, sure.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, so I think eventually, his father realised, because I think his father regarded him as a garage hand, he called him at one point, you know. He wanted to go into the arts and sort of be a famous artist or whatever, or sculptor, and he just wanted to sort of do machinery, and that was it. So it's quite nice to actually find that. And what we also did then, because at the archive you can actually look up where people lived in certain years, so we actually found that's the house where he lived in. It's just up Hurst Grove. You couldn't possibly ever be late for work, because that was like literally 2 minutes across the road and go to the side entrance of Allen's and you'd be there. So he's actually there in 1932 according to the electoral register, at number 162, and then I looked it up to see where he was the next year, thinking he'd still be there and start campaigning for a blue plaque to go on it. He'd moved a bit further down, about 3 doors up from John and Elsie there. Just up Hurst Grove, just around the corner from Preston Road. So I was really impressed with that. That's sort of what we found just a few days ago. You know, that someone that famous lived about two minutes around the corner from where we live. And we thought that's quite a good point to end today's talk.